Hi, this is Rob Vanstone again with an impromptu Rider Rumblings podcast. No video, which is probably good considering my appearance right now. And I'm here with Murray McCormick, and we're going to discuss the latest out of the Canadian Football League with a particular pertinence to the Saskatchewan-roughriders in Regina and Saskatchewan. The league announced on Wednesday that the 2020 Grey Cup, which had been awarded to Saskatchewan, has now been awarded to Saskatchewan for 2022. The 2021 game will remain in Hamilton. As for 2020, it'll be the Grey Cup finalist. If there is a season, the Grey Cup finalist with the best regular season record will host it, as would be the case if you have a home playoff game. So, and Touchdown Atlantic scheduled for July 25th has been canceled. I think that's a reasonably accurate summation of what happened. Mur, what are your thoughts on all this?
Makes sense. That's the two words that come up in my mind. It just makes a lot of sense to do. There was so much uncertainty around this. They had to address when the season's going to start. Will it start in September? Well, if I was a bet man, I don't know if I'd take that bet. The Grey Cup, they couldn't have a Grey Cup with everything that's going on right now, with social distancing, face masks, and crowds and whatever sort of crowds are around. So they had to do something about that. I thought 2022 would be the reasonable way to go, and I think it shows some foresight in them that you're not going to lose it. Right, Saskatchewan hasn't lost the Grey Cup; it's just been postponed. And Touchdown Atlantic, I think maybe the death knell for the expansion franchise going into the Maritimes. I think that game didn't hinge on all that. I don't think there's going to be money to build a new stadium in Halifax right now with all the billions that are being paid out. So that's kind of a sad offshoot to that. But Randy Ambrosie nailed it today. It wasn't good news, but he delivered it. And I like the town hall format with fans being allowed to ask questions and not media for a change. And I think it was just it had to come. It was coming, Rob. We knew it was coming, but like we said the last time, it's just jarring and saddening and disappointing that it's at this point of the season right now, or whatever season. It's not a season,
But
is
it's
it?
not really surprising. When you hear it from Randy Ambrosian, as we did when he talked to the House of Commons Committee on Finance, there's a lot of assumptions, and logic tells you that this can or won't happen. But then when you hear the commissioner say it really drives it home. And he handled himself so well today. I know he's absorbed a lot of criticism for the way things were done before the parliamentary committee, but I think he deserves an equal amount of commendation for making the smart decisions, or at least being in charge of taking command of a situation that resulted in smart decisions being made, and articulating the rationale very reasonably and well.
Yeah.
And conceivably, it could still work out in the Riders' favor. If there is a season, they have a very good team. Maybe they play host to two Grey Cup. Maybe Regina's got two Grey Cup games within a span of 2 calendar years. The way this works out, so it doesn't eliminate the possibility that they could still have it here. But what was going to suffer was going to be the festival. And a game's a game. But as Randy Ambrosie said during the town hall, if it was just a game, it wouldn't really be imperative to move it right now. But you're talking about an entire festival, and this gives Regina and Saskatchewan and the Rough Riders an opportunity to do it right in 2020, presumably. You never know with these pandemics anymore. But and to present themselves and to present Saskatchewan the way they did in 95, 2003, 2013. So that's the fairest decision for all concerned. It's some short-term pain to absorb, but I don't think it was unexpected.
I'm just thinking that we haven't really been in a football world other than you and I talking a little bit, but there really wasn't, I hate to say it, a real buzz about the possibility of the Grey Cup being here in my little world. Like, people were more worried about the season started and that kind of stuff. I don't think they were caught up in the excitement of the Grey Cup. That's probably because we haven't had any reason to get excited about it. But I think it's as I said, it's the way to go. It makes a lot of sense to postpone it. Now, starting the season in September, Randy touched upon it. There's all these issues logistically. There's getting across the border. There's bans on gatherings where the stadium's going to be around. So we're not out of the woods by any stretch on this decision, Rob. But it gives them a little bit of time to see what happens and maybe make another decision in September. But
And they need that time. They need time to make more presentations to the government, because government funding or lack thereof possibly will determine the course largely of the 2020 season if there is a possibility of playing. And Randy Ambrosi wouldn't get into any of the details
No,
today and any of the what ifs. And that was prudent because they still don't know. They're still waiting to hear back from the government. They're still talking with the CFL Players Association. So there's so many variables here and so much uncertainty. But if you look at it, it just, you really wonder, whether they can do it. And that much hasn't changed. The CFL playing in empty stadiums or mostly empty stadiums, to what extent can that ever be practical? Can they possibly get enough funding from the federal government to make that practical for them? When you consider that, I would think from the case of a majority of teams, it's a money-losing proposition to operate a CFL franchise these days. And now without gate revenues and all the other ancillary money coming in, is it practical to do that? There's different perspectives. David Braley said the other day that if there isn't a 2020 season, the CFL could very well fold. I wouldn't go that far, but there's an equal number of consequences and possibly more if they do go ahead and play, but they can't play before fans. And the border is another issue. And we could talk about all those impediments until we're blue or green in the face. I'm just not sure any of those issues are going to change.
I don't think they are either. You talk about no fans this end. There's still people involved with the games, and I think I read a story about the NFL breaking it down. The training staffs, the video staff, the coaching staff, the media who were part of the process. There's still people at games, so it's not a completely hygienic or coronavirus. It should be coronavirus free. And then that's still part. There's still going to be people there, but it's just not going to be fans in the stands. And they pay to be there. Most of us are paid to be there, so it's a little bit of a different world for that. I just don't see, with even starting the season without fans, how they're going to get the players to go through this stuff like testing, quarantining when they come here. And let's face it, they haven't really been working out in football style gyms, and they've been losing, I think, muscle mass and football fitness. As hard as they're working, I'm not saying they're not working hard, but they're losing stuff that makes them football players during this extended break in the summer off. And I don't know if I'm one of them and you're 34, well, not 34, say 28 or 29, and you got to say to your wife, I'm coming up here to make half the money I made last year to play football. We might see a few more retirements this off during this stretch too because of that reality of that situation.
Plus, there would be a training camp, but I'm sure it will be much shorter than normal. There wouldn't be preseason games, so the amount of time you'd have to get into so-called football shape would be limited. Does that increase the likelihood of injury? You'd be playing, especially the season goes into December, you'd be playing a higher percentage of your games
in the winter,
in cold weather, and out west especially on really treacherous, hard playing surfaces. So again, we're presenting so many possible impediments. What are some of the ways you think this can work, Mar? I guess that's the answer, isn't it?
Sorry, Rob.
I wish my jokes got laughs like that.
I can't think of any. That's a good. I mean, I was like, you had to do some of my best thinking in the shower in the mornings, and I'm like going, I can't see how they can get through that. The hub city idea doesn't work because it's so financially. Well, I'm going back. I can't think of any, Rob. Could you maybe help me out here? You put me out on an island here. I can't think of any how they can get a season. Did that say something? Wow.
I think a lot of it has to do with how much money is going to be come from Justin Trudeau and friends.
Yeah.
Is there enough money there to make it worthwhile? And there's so many other expenses that they would incur that they wouldn't normally face. The whole process of if you have this hub city concept, there's hotels, there's security, there's everything to make sure that none of this transmits, and you have to create this hermetically sealed environment, and that takes resources, that takes people, that takes money, in addition to staging games without the anticipated and accustomed revenues. So they're going to need some serious dough from the federal government or some benefactor whose generosity is so grandiose that it enables it to happen. Otherwise, I think the best answer is probably the one that you provided with your very endearing chortling.
Also, where are these players going to stay? Like, I don't know. Like, there's probably open apartments around here, but how are they going to go out there and look at an apartment where they're going to stay if the quarantine rules are still in place? Like, unless for
A
other things
lot of
that
university
pop.
dorms are going to be
Yeah.
open.
So where are they going to stay if they have even a shortened training camp? And how are they going to keep that stadium disinfected? Like the washrooms and the weight rooms and all that stuff. And where we're going to be allowed. You and I are going to be allowed to sit shoulder to shoulder again? Never again, I don't think. Hopefully.
But you didn't want that in the first place,
No, I
Mike.
didn't like that. I didn't like that seat in the best of times, but that's the kind of way it goes. But yeah, I just don't see it. And Randy's trying to paint that picture, and I think he's got to do that. But
Well, they've got to exhaust every option, and
yeah,
it's good that they're doing it. There's perhaps the fact that before they can get going, it looks like baseball is going to start. At least spring training will likely restart in June. They're hoping to get games in July. The NHL is working on some plans. The NBA is working on some plans. So perhaps the CFL has the advantage, without the imperative of starting before, say, Labor Day, of being able to look at what the other leagues are doing. And granted, those leagues have more resources, but look at what the other leagues are doing and kind of cherry picking what works, and using the examples of what works and what doesn't work to formulate its own strategy. This could all come together. As much as we're talking about it now, this might all come together in a matter of days in August or even
yeah,
early September. But they do have the advantage of looking at what other leagues are doing. And who knows, the NFL, granted, two entirely different scales of business, might the NFL's template might be useful to the CFL, at least to some degree.
because one of the things the riders mentioned in their response today was how they're going to deal with Grey Cup tickets, and they talk about a $50 deposit to keep your Grey Cup seat for 2022, which I don't think people will be too hurt about. But what happens if people? What are they going to do with a shortened season? And they have to they're going to talk to season ticket holders via email today about that. It says their ticket office is closed because of the pandemic, so they can't even deal with people coming to the ticket office. So the people are going to get emails today or tomorrow, and they're going to be finding out how the riders are going to deal with the different options for a shortened season. Do you say to them, maybe you're the biggest rider, you're a biggest rider fan you can be? He says, I'll let them keep my money just so it keeps them alive. Or if you're like a normal people, who a lot of people have may have bought tickets and have jobs, don't have jobs, they kind of need that money back if they're not going to see football. So there's another auxiliary stuff to this whole issue that's going to come up now for every CFL team. And what do they do with season ticket holders and their money? And if they go that, if they cancel the season, I think that's one of the reasons the league is being so much financial trouble, is paying off season tickets. And even these shortened season ticket packages, they don't operate on an 8-game schedule. They operate on 18. I don't know what kind of options the riders can come up with that'll keep season tickets holders happy and to still keep games going on.
Yeah, suddenly there'd be no gate revenue. There'd be no season ticket revenue. There'd be no sponsorship revenue. And if they play games, they get the TSN revenue, or a
Yeah,
percentage, thereof, of what it would normally be. And that's a considerable amount of money. And
yeah,
plus the exposure, plus the continuity. So there are reasons for them to do it. It just, can you make it happen? And Randy Ambrosi talked about perhaps playing into December, and if so, I'm not sure how the concept of play the game in the home of the team with the best regular season record that qualifies for the Grey Cup works.
yeah,
It's fine if the BC Lions are that team, or Toronto
yeah.
is that team, or Montreal would have Olympic Stadium at its disposal. Down east, it's typically milder in December than it is out here. But what if you get, and there's also that risk in November,
Oh,
but what if you get an absolutely brutal spell of weather in December
yeah,
in Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Regina? Ugh.
yeah,
That could be pretty ugly.
yeah. There's so many things. Like I don't know. It's just kind of overwhelming at times. And then we can start talking about our own personal lives. How it's erupt and stuff like that. There's kids not going back to school to the fall, Rob, and there's people out of work and stuff. There's so many other things going on that the CFL to us is very close and very important to us. But it's, so some people when Vandy came out for the federal funding, there are a lot of people against supporting the CFL, which surprised me. I kind of thought there'd be, oh yeah, let's keep this old girl alive. We got to do what we can, but people are saying no. They don't want federal funding going to the CFL when people are starving. So there's also a perception out there with the CFL right now that it's not important to Canadians as important to Canadians as we think it is, which is kind of scary in my mind when sooner or later the government's got to decide, say we're going to give you money or we're not.
And
And then
sometimes there's the issue of there'll be funding for arts groups, and it seems that there's more of an outcry when sporting events or sporting federations or athletes get government money than an arts group. But to me, it's the same type of thing. You're still talking about people who are. I think of professional athletes as people who are artists in a way. They're among the top echelon of what they do, and they are there to entertain people before crowds. And I think there's some commonalities there, but the funding for arts groups doesn't create nearly the backlash that the suggestion of funding for sports should. I think there should be a better case for the CFL, because it's not like the NHL where remember the ill-fated bailout in 2000 that was pulled off the table really quickly, and the whole outcry there was, why should these millionaires get our money? Well, there are some people in the CFL who are very well off, but it's an entirely different scale. One thing I really liked that Randy Ambrosie talked about today was about how this is an opportunity for the CFL to take a look at its business model. Yeah. And there were a lot of questions he couldn't answer today, or wouldn't answer today, but he's very emphatic about that, how the business model has to be addressed. And as unfortunate as these circumstances are, it has really underlined the contrasts in markets in the CFL and some of the fundamental issues that really have to be addressed now. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really impressive and really forthcoming.
Yeah, but it's nice look at your business model, but you wish you had some money, a committee to do something with it, because basically they don't have any money coming in. So what is their business model based on? They tried CFL 2.0, which obviously is going to go by the wayside now, I would think, because part of the reason behind CFL 2.0 and the globalization or the internationalization of the game was there's no more revenue in Canada. They've got to find other ways to generate revenue for the CFL. So you have to find expanding towards the rest of the world to maybe get support there. So with that out of the way, I don't think they're going to have a chance. I don't know how much revenue is out there in Canadian sports. And we're also figuring, Rob, and I know are the fans going to come back? Do we know that? We don't know that.
Gradually. I mean, you can't just flick that switch. I think sports of all descriptions are going to face that. Yeah. There's going to be a gradual trickling back of people. I mean, businesses and individuals, they're feeling it right now. So the league has to account for that. And I think what has to happen is there has to be a scaling down. Maybe the salary caps for football operations and for players have to be adjusted to reflect the new realities. Maybe teams have to look at their size of their overall administrations and say, look, do we need that big of an infrastructure? That isn't capped. And maybe teams have to adjust to that. Do you need to be paying quarterbacks $700,000 a year? You could, if you paid them $300,000 or $400,000 a year, they'd still play for it, because what are their options that are going to be comparably lucrative? So I think there's some things that the league has to look at as far as making its product and its business plan more streamlined, and so that there aren't the obvious inequities. It's ridiculous when you get a situation like where the Toronto Argonauts, who've been a perennial sieve as far as losing money, end up paying Mark Trestman $700,000. Yeah, and they're losing millions a year. But where's the bar set when the Riders pay Chris Jones what they paid him? That raises the market value for everybody. And so the league has to realize you're as big as you want to be and as ambitious as you try to be, it's still a smaller scale professional football league, and its business model should reflect that. It shouldn't be at the cost of aspiration, but it should be enacted, keeping in mind the realities of the league and the necessity for long-term survival. I think that requires as Randy Ambrosi said today, perhaps a 3.0 mindset.
Yeah. It's kind of hard. We pick on the quarterbacks, but there's only really three quarterbacks making in those $700,000 ranges. It's because people don't. The CFL guys aren't getting paid lots. They're
No,
getting
but
they're being
you know,
paid well.
but if player A is getting $700,000, then that sets the market for somebody else who's making four. So
Yeah.
maybe if the Bo Levi Mitchells of the world are making $300,000 or $400,000, then somebody who's not quite at that tier makes $200,000. So they set the market for everybody. And do you need to pay coaches what you pay them? Do you need to pay general managers what you pay them? A lot of the assistant coaches aren't well paid, but the head coaches are, and the general managers are. Do they need to make that much? I really wonder if there can be some scaling back there. You can still get good people. If a GM's making $350,000 a year, say, I still think you can get a good GM for 60% of that. That's
Yeah.
still good money.
But I know we talked quickly about money here, and the Riders did. No, we haven't. This is great. Where the Riders didn't announce, but we discovered they took some pay cuts. There's been some reductions in salaries for football ops and business ops. So they are doing something. They're not just. They made the obvious reaction that the money's not coming in, so you can't spend as much. So the Riders are doing something to address this, and I think it's not commendable. I don't know what the word is, Rob. It's the word. It's the reality of the situation now that people aren't going to make the same money they did before in every
Yeah,
business. So we'll see where that takes us.
yeah, it's such as life. I hope they can find a way to continue to be, part of what we do. And I don't say that because my livelihood is writing sports. It's been 50 years that I've been following this league and this football team, and it's something that I love, and it's something that I enjoy. I miss watching football, just like I miss going to movies, just like I miss going to the gym. Can
Yeah.
your life go on without going to the gym, going to the movies, and watching professional sports? Yes, but it's a diminished existence if some of the things or a lot of the things that you enjoy are no longer there. And for a lot of Canadians, especially in this part of the country, the Rough Riders, the Canadian Football League, they're part of the fabric, and that's why you hope for the preservation of it. And if not, well, it's they still got to pay off Mosaic Stadium, don't they?
Yes. All right, Rob. Well,
I
classified
should let
today.
you get to your writing. You've got a lot
Yes.
more more
Yes,
writing
I
to do
don't.
than me today. And
Yeah.
please have it done in 15 minutes.
Oh, sure. Well, that'd be my goal today, but I'm hoping to get a drink of water first. Anyway.
I'd like to thank everybody for spending time with us today. Thank you, Mark Melnichuk, our producer, for convening this discussion and for handling the technical aspects. And thanks for spending some time with us today. We'll likely be doing another one of these quite soon because this is quite the story and it's not changing anytime soon. Thanks for your time. Take care and stay safe.